Hello, geometry students. Today during class, you looked at the angle addition postulate and angle bisector in Sketchpad. And so now let's go ahead and talk about what the angle addition postulate is. Take a minute and draw angle ABC with ray BD being inside it. All right, angle addition postulate is adding two angles together to get the whole entire angle. So let's take a look here. This angle is 20 and this angle is 30. Wouldn't you add those two angles together to get the whole entire angle? So you would say 20 plus 30 equals 50. Same thing applies when you're talking about angles that are named by the points. So let's take a look at angle ABC. The measure of angle A, B as in boy, D, plus the measure of angle DBC. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the top angle and I'm adding it to the bottom angle. And it's going to equal the whole entire angle, which is the measure of angle ABC. Now in chapter 1 we're going to solve a lot of these problems using algebra, and then in chapter 2 we're going to start working in proofs. So you're talking about angle measures. That's a common mistake. Students will forget to write the M's there. You need to have the measures of the angles. In Sketchpad, when you analyzed angle bisector, you should have realized that when you have an angle bisector, it cuts the angle into two equal pieces. So I've already drawn angle XYZ with ray YM in the interior, and in my picture, YM, ray YM, is an angle bisector. And so when I have an angle bisector, it cuts the angles into two equal pieces. Again, I'm talking about the measure of an angle, so I need the measure of angle. This top angle is going to be equal to the bottom angle. So the top angle is the measure of angle X, Y, M. It equals the measure of angle M, Y, Z. We've talked about congruent with congruent line segments. Congruent angles are angles that are equal. Congruent means equals. So if I'm talking about two angles being equal like I have above here, and I want to write them as congruent, at that point then the M's drop off and you're just talking about angle. XYM congruent to angle MYZ. So when you're talking about congruent, you don't need the measures. When you're talking about equals, you need the M's, the measures. I don't know if you have straight angle in your notes. Please add that. A straight angle would be a straight line, and so that would be 180 degrees. And I've drawn an angle here. That angle is angle DEF. And that is a straight angles. Straight angles equal 180 degrees. All right, now that we've gathered our information, why don't we move on to some examples, some exercises. In the figure, ray BA and BC are opposite rays. So they make a straight line then, which would be 180 degrees. Then it goes on to say, ray BF bisects angle CBE. So this ray is cutting that angle into two equal pieces. So I'm going to mark these two angles equal, and I don't think I talked about how to mark equal angles, but you mark them by the same curve. So if angle 3 and angle 4 are going to be equal. Now it reads, if the measure of EBF, so I'm going to write that expression in for EBF, it's 6x plus 4. And then I have the measure of CBF, which is 7x minus 2. And I've already marked those two as being equal by marking it with that curve. So those two are equal, so I'm going to write my equation, 6x plus 4 equals 7x minus 2. I'm going to go ahead and do my algebra at this point. I'm going to move my 2, I'm going to add 2 and add 2, that's going to get me 6. I'm going to move my 6x, that's going to get me x. So x equals 6. The question is asking me to find the measure of angle EBF. And this is one thing a lot of you students have to work on, is you have to work on showing your work. I'm looking for the measure of angle EBF. I'm not just going to write a whole bunch of numbers down. I need to say the measure of angle EBF. EBF is right here. And that is 6x plus 4. So at this point now I'm going to go ahead and substitute 6 in there. I need to write measure of angle EBF equals 6 times 6 plus 4. So my measure of angle EBF equals 36 plus 4, which is 40. A lot of the students here are forgetting to write this down. You've got numbers just kind of hanging out there, so I'm trying to emphasize that. Details on your work, guys and gals. All right, let's go ahead and look at example number 2, exercise number 2. All right, let's pause this. Okay, I've got my diagram in my example here now. In the figure, BA and BC are opposite rays, and then I have BF bisecting CBE. So here's my angle. BF is bisecting it. That means it splits it into 2 equal pieces. So I'm going to mark those 2 equal. And then angle 1 and angle 2 are equal. So when I come over here to 1 and 2, I'm going to mark them in a different way. Do you guys see how I'm giving it a double curve? So I'm marking it in a different way. Now I'm going to place my expressions into my picture. My ABE, that whole angle is 100, so I put a huge curve on, I wrote 100 there. A, B as in boy, D is 2, and then quantity R plus 5. 2 times the quantity R plus 5. All right, so now at this point, I have to find R, and then I have to find D, B, E. And so when I'm looking at this whole angle, there's 2 ways to work this problem. I'm looking at this whole angle, I'm saying that's 100. So I'm going to do my angle addition postulate by adding the 2 angles together to equal the 100. And so do you see that these 2 angles are equal? So I'm going to write my 2 times quantity R plus 5. I'm going to write it down twice because I have 2 of those. Those are equal. And then 2, and then R plus 5. And that equals the whole entire angle, which is 100. And you can go ahead and do your algebra at this point by distributing. Some students might be saying, this was our first way. Our second way, if these 2 are going to be equal, then I'm going to cut this 100 into 2 equal pieces. That would make this 50. So that's the other way to solve this problem. You could take your 2 times your quantity R plus 5 and equal it to 50. Either one of those is correct. I'm going to go ahead and work on the second one. I'm going to distribute my 2. I'm going to get 2R plus 10 is 50. I'm going to move my 10. I'm going to get 2R is 40. And then I'm going to get R to be 20. All right, now I'm looking for D BC. So what I need to find right now is DBE. I'm sorry, this angle right here, DBE. Right, so, oh, I found that already. That's 50. This was 50 and that's 50. So the measure of angle DBE is 50. If you wanted to, you could plug it in. You could plug your 20 in right there and you're going to get exactly the same answer. Box that in. Oops, and we need R as well. All right, let's move on to our last example. It says in the figure, XP and XT are opposite rays, so I know I have 180 degrees. XQ, here's XQ. It bisects PSX. And do you guys see how I'm taking my pencil and I'm outlining the angles? That helps me as a visual learner. This is bisecting. So this angle here and that angle there are equal. R XQ is 2x plus 7. RXP is 3x minus 11. And then they give me PXS to be the whole entire thing. Okay, so I have the whole entire thing, but I don't have anything written here. Do you guys see that this piece and that piece are equal? So I'm going to add these two pieces together. That's going to give me 2x and 3x, which is 5x. Positive 7 minus 11 is negative 4. So now I have all three pieces of my angle, and I'm going to add them together. So I'm going to take my 3x minus 11, my 2x plus 7, my 5x minus 4, and it equals x plus 37. Now at this point, I'm going to pause, and I'd like you to do the algebra on this, and maybe you have. I'm going to take my x's, I'm going to add them up. I'm getting 10 of them. 5 is 15. I'm going to take my numbers. I'm going to get a minus 8, x plus 37. Okay, at that point, I'm going to move my x. That gets me 9x. I'm going to move my 8. That gets me 45. So x ends up equaling 5. Now they're asking me to find QXS. QXS. So do you guys see how this works? I'm constantly going back to my diagram. I encourage you to draw the diagrams in your homework and go ahead and write your expressions in your picture. So my measure of angle QXS equals, it is 5x minus 4. So I'm going to go ahead and plug the 4 in. And remember, this is a problem for you guys in your homework. You're not writing that down. You're just going ahead and writing maybe 5 times 5 minus 4, but you're not talking about what it represents. It represents QXS. So now my measure of angle QXS equals 5 times 5 minus 4. So I got 25 minus 4. So the measure of QXS equals 21. I'm going to box that in. It asks me for that angle. And so we're done with our lesson. You guys have a great night, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.